Hello, everyone. Mark O'Donnell here with Operations Excellence. Welcome to episode 5 of our podcast. And today we have a couple of great guests for you again. Our first guest is coming to us from beautiful California. My good friend and one of my clients, in full disclosure, Adam Roemer. Adam is regional manager, one of the regional managers for US Air Conditioning Distributorships. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So glad you took the time. I know it's a little bit early. I know you're an early morning guy, so it's not too early for you. We started our conversation about 8 a.m. your time this morning, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries.
So for our listeners, Adam, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background before you came to US Air, and then maybe kind of walk through your journey with US Air Conditioning?
Sure, yeah, no problem. So I would say I'm second gen HVAC. My dad had a HVAC company when I was younger, and over the summer, he'd have me working with him, in my teens and stuff, and learning a little bit about the industry, just not anything crazy, but just the basics and, things like that, to which I really didn't care for, to be honest. I took other jobs working in retail, a grocery store. I'm also a martial arts instructor, so that was my passion for the longest time. While I was working at the grocery store, it ended up closing. And so I needed another job. I had just moved out and I was living on my own and bills pile up, so I found my dad actually found a connection at a local HVAC supply house, where I started working in the warehouse and I moved up to driver and so on and so forth. And so over the years, I've just kept climbing that ladder and moving up, counter sales, a specialist, if you will, assistant manager, a manager, so on and so forth. So it's been, I would say, going over 25 years or so. I'd say I've been in the trade. So
I'd like to jump in with one question, not to interrupt you, but I thought that we've known each other for a couple of years. I don't know if I knew that you worked for your dad, but I thought it was interesting when you said you didn't like it. What about the HVAC? I'm assuming that was install and repair work.
It was, yeah, definitely.
What about that didn't you like?
So my dad was 6'5", 280. He's a big dude.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't fit into attics,
right?
And crawl spaces and stuff. And I was really, really small. And so
that was your job.
And that was my job. And in the summer, we hit those triple digits, and it's 115 outside. It's sweltering inside. So guess who got to do it? This guy right here. So I was just I didn't like crawling around in attics, and in my head as a teenager, that's all I thought it was, basically.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, and I can empathize because I lived in South Mississippi for a couple of years and actually made the mistake of re-insulating my attic, and it was basically a crawl space. And South Mississippi is even hotter, I think, than California.
Yeah.
So I get it. Please continue, not to interrupt you, but you started.
Yeah, no. And I was working for a company for the longest time. I believe it was 17 years or so. Mm-hmm. And I just had a happenstance meeting with Jack Scarsey, who's the vice president, and I just, within that first 5 minutes of meeting Jack, I just felt a connection. I wasn't really looking per se to move, but there's something about the magnetism and greatness that he projects, and the love that he has for what he does, that really drew me to even consider moving, from one company to the next. I am a creature of habit. I don't like change per se. But it was just something about, what he was offering as far as not being a number and a personal touch of being a part of something like US Air. And man, it really got me. And I was like, yeah, I really want to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but like I said, yeah, 5 minutes of talking with Jack, and I mean, you know him. He's a real energetic guy, and he brings a lot to the table with knowledge and just his charm and his just his being, Um, yeah, he had me hooked, and I haven't looked back. I love working for this company. It's been a great just over 8 years, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I've been friends with Jack, for you know this, for 55 plus years. When I say that, I feel old, and I guess at this point in life, I am. But I totally get it. He's
Yeah.
had that what you described, right? That ability to just draw people to him. He's had that since he was young. So yeah,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah. So tell us about, as you know, now you're at US Air Conditioning, and so how long you been there? What year did you join the company?
2017.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you had some significant knowledge and experience in the HVAC business before then, and
Right.
were you
Right.
were
Yeah.
you already a manager at that point?
I was a manager. I'd been a manager for a couple years, and we were growing refrigeration in dairy and that kind of field and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
we did HVAC too, but it was mostly refrigeration.
Right.
And we grew some business out in a local area around here in the Central Valley, and it was good. It was great business, and everybody in that area is just really great. Um, and I loved being there. But what it boiled down to was being a number. And, I wouldn't say I don't thrive, because um I like to work hard, and I like what happens when you put all the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm there with my team and we're all, jiving real good, I like that camaraderie that we have, and we get that job well done. But at the same time, working for a large company that I was working for, um, it felt like being a number.
Right.
And, here at US Air, man, I don't have that feeling. If I need to talk to Jack, I can pick up my phone and he'll answer the phone.
Right.
He knows me my name. I don't see him all the time, but we can have a conversation. Just as buddies do.
Right.
And I consider that to be a great asset to have working for a company like that,
Right.
like US Air. So yeah, it was a great thing. But working here, I've been the manager ever since then. And about 2 years ago, Jack gave me the option to pick up a couple stores and manage Fresno, where I'm at, and oversee a couple other branches. And it's been great. I get to meet some other great team members, and really, see if I can help them and be a part of their teams as well,
Mm-hmm.
and help them with whatever they need, whether it's, dealing with an issue with the factory or something like that, or a customer issue, or they just take stuff that I have worked on, my whole life. It's
Right.
just a customer service aspect of it, helping them be with their customers in a better way,
Yeah.
and that's what I really enjoy about the job that I currently have
Mm-hmm.
as regional, is that I get to interact with customers, and hopefully my interactions, create those bonds with our customers, and I know it works in my territories, but getting those people in those one-on-one or groups, and
Right.
having that connection with them has always been really great.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple times in a couple different ways being a team builder, and there's no doubt in my mind you are and have been for some time. And by the way, I'm sure my friend Jack probably recognized that in the first conversation he had with you, because he's a pretty tuned in to people. I will say that is definitely one of his strong assets. So you are definitely a team builder. You're a type A. You're an achiever, right? You step into US Air Conditioning. You've been rolled into this role, and I know one of the things I've been working with Jack on for 3.5 years, I guess now, is a little bit of reorganization, because he had so much on his plate, and you and I have talked about that.
Right.
So certainly part of that process with developing more regional managers and developing that role into something more than it was at the current time was a key to things that he was working on. Part of that is yourself and I guess it was half a dozen or so total other regional managers went through a customized version of leadership development with me. I wonder if you could share a little bit about your experience with that program and what your takeaways from that was for you.
Yeah, for sure. I found it helpful in my personal growth and understanding of all the other intricacies of management, not just managing, um, you know, items in a store, but the people I work with, um, you know, day-to-day activities that pop up as a manager. I learned um, obviously that I strive in team environments, and I also learned that you know we did some group exercises.
Mm-hmm.
We did one-on-one stuff too, but when we did group exercises, I learned a lot from the thought processes of my peers.
Mm.
And that I found that helpful to see it from other views, which I like. If I have a way of doing things, but if I can see that it's working better a different way, I'm gonna adapt.
Right.
You know, I think that's the only way you can grow, is by always learning and always adapting to what's going on around. And I
Absolutely.
really feel that the coaching classes that we had, really opened up the opportunity to see that.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for it. It was a great class, and I love our one-on-one time as well. So yeah.
Yeah, you bring up one of the really cool points about doing group development work, because I also do some one-on-one development work, but one of the cool things about that is you just described it very, very well. And I use this in leadership roles in my life in the past, is trying to use more of a 360 problem solving approach, right? And you can only do that by gaining different perspectives, right? And that's exactly what you described. And I'm really glad to hear that takeaway, because that is one of the great things about having those groups. Is the hope is, from my standpoint as a facilitator, is that what happens is what you described, right? That people learn there's this high value in practicing empathy and understanding not just what somebody else is thinking and feeling, but why, where they're coming from, right? That naturally, by definition, is going to broaden our perspective. And if I have a broader perspective, I'm much more likely to make better decisions, because I'm going to better understand the situation. If I can turn it around and see it from different perspectives, that's I hear that and I sit here and smile today, and beyond whatever Jack and US Air Conditioning paid me for that program, that's why I get up in the morning, right? Because I get to hear results like that, and you're using that, right? And others
for sure.
with you are using that. And the other thing with the group setting, you already had relationships with everybody in that group, but I would dare say those relationships were deeper, and you understood each other better after spending those 12 weeks working together through that program.
Right. And as a manager, you're gonna get people from all over, and everybody has great tools that they already come with.
Sure.
They may not be the perfect candidate for every situation, but you can identify and use those tools to make everybody work together as a team. And I think learning that um, in the coaching classes has really streamlined, our processes here, and really got everybody going on the same page a little better.
Right.
We all have a goal, you know, not just for the month, but for the year, or I'm sorry, the quarter, then the year, so on and so forth. And it really is great to see, team members that I've kind of brought along the way start to develop, uh, some things that may make them a manager in the future, which is great. I've got a couple of candidates that are going to be taking the the coaching classes with you,
Yeah.
and the leadership and stuff. And I've got one in there right now, but I have two more on deck ready to go. And that's
Daniel,
just
right? Daniel is your guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Daniel's taking it right now. Yeah.
It's
And
funny. You and I haven't talked since the last session, which was last Thursday, but we'll talk offline when we connect again. But
yeah.
just in the past couple of weeks, I've seen the worm turn a little bit for Daniel, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, Daniel's a reserved guy. He's real quiet.
Yeah.
But this, I think you guys are on week 5. I don't remember exactly.
No,
Maybe
actually, this week coming up. Last week was week 9. This week coming up is week 10 already.
it's going by quick then.
Yeah.
You can really, really see some of the change that he's had in just that short amount of time.
Yeah.
Opening up more. He's engaging more with his peers and with the customers. It doesn't take much. I mean, they're only an hour-long class or so, but it really gets those wheels turning, and he's really starting to grow into a different version of himself. And it's really great to see, as his manager, just looking back and watching that growth.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things. I know you would get excited over that, but
Absolutely.
I like seeing that as well.
Yeah.
Is because I have an everyday with Daniel.
Yep.
And seeing him grow like that, it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's cool to see a guy like you, and I'm blessed because I have a number of people like yourself that the highest form of flattery for me is when people I've worked with go and become outstanding coaches and mentors, and you're one of those people. And
I appreciate that.
Well, that's you know me. I might be Irish, but when it comes to this stuff, I do not BS. Right? It's all, I'm going to tell it to you straight, even if it hurts your feelings, only because I'm going to tell you the truth, right? Not because I want to hurt you. No, you've taken that ball and run with it, and that is cool, right? That's the ultimate thing to see, is to see other people develop. That's why I went into this in the first place. Thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned that we do one-on-one sessions, you and I. Can you talk about that for a minute for our listeners? Like, what benefits do you get from those? And I believe we do it twice a month. Is kind of the schedule we're on.
I mean, my schedule's been pretty hectic itself, and I know, I have to push it. But when we do get to connect, it's really great because, I'll use you, and pardon the term, it is a sounding board. You're more than that, but
no pardon needed.
Really,
I take that as a compliment.
It helps me when we have our conversations. If I've got something I'm struggling with, that I can throw at you to see if you think that I'm on the right track with what you would think. I guess you're helping me walk through what I've already decided. But at the same time, it's like I'm getting feedback. Then, well, maybe rethink that, or see how you're saying that this may not be the best way, or maybe you might want to say this, or restructure how we're talking, or having somebody there to kind of, for the lack of better use, kind of hold my hand a little bit in a decision is really nice and comforting, in a sense that I get clarity when we have these one-on-ones, and it really helps me organize my thoughts and helps me get where that end game is with whatever I'm dealing with.
Right.
Whether it's a customer issue, a personnel issue, a personal issue, whatever I'm working on, and you've helped me navigate that a little clearer, I would say, and with more direction.
Yeah, I like the way you describe that, and I like to tell people I'm not the answer man, and don't pretend to be, right. But what I think I've become pretty attuned into and pretty decent at is kind of getting people to spin the top for themselves and asking that next question, and hopefully allowing you to gain some broader perspective as you're looking at a situation or a challenge, and how you're going to solve that, and come at it. So it's great to hear you say that. I appreciate that, and that was a great description.
Well, I love the times that we do get to connect like that. I always feel so refreshed, looking at what my problem is or whatever I'm looking at in a new set of eyes, if you will. It takes a lot off my shoulders to just like decompress and be like, okay, now I'm ready to go. I'm refocused, and I'm ready to start this up again. So yeah, I love the one-on-ones, and I converse with some of the other managers that also do the one-on-ones, and I know I'm not the only one that feels that way.
I
Um,
appreciate
you
that.
know, yeah, no, I love our time together, Mark. You know that, and I look forward to when we do them.
Well,
Uh,
don't tell Jack I said this, and if he watches this episode, I'll say that somebody made me say it, but it doesn't feel like working when I'm working with any of you guys, any of you folks,
yeah,
one on one.
I I agree. I don't think of it as work when I come in. It's another family that I have.
Yep.
I'm here with this team. Over 40 hours a week.
Yep.
I see them more than some of my extended family. So I have a real close personal connection with the team here. And if somebody's hurting, you know, there's the shoulder. Go ahead, tell me about it. My door is always open, policy type thing, and I just, I want the best from the team that I have, and I'm always going to be here coaching them along, so that they can do what they're wanting to do, and the maximum that they can put out there in this world. And I love it. I
Yeah.
love seeing it.
It shows, right? And that goes right back to one of the things we work extensively on in the development programs is attitude, right? And how important attitude is, because we can spend so much time learning new skills and honing those skills and gaining knowledge and building knowledge, and those are all important. But without that proper attitude that you just described, which is wonderful, right? Like this is what I love to do, and it shows, right? That you can't fake that. Either you really feel that way or you don't. And you bring that attitude, and it's infectious just as much as if somebody was in your position and had a completely opposite attitude would be infectious. So that's great to see. Great to see. So my last question for you this morning, because I know your time is valuable and I know you got a business to run. Where do you go from here? What's next for Adam? What's next for US Air Conditioning?
Growth. We're always looking to grow. We're growing the people that we have right now, uh, getting them up to speed. The new people we hired on. We have uh, opportunities to be in other markets. I've asked, with Jack and a couple other people, territories that we're looking to move to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slow process, obviously. Uh, Today's economy is kind of all over the place, but
Right.
eventually we're going to get in those markets and grow some business there. Hopefully, with some team members that have gone through the leadership classes, we can easily slide them into a management role. It's definitely one of the things that we look forward to, is here at US Air, is just finding great people from within and
Mm-hmm.
giving them the opportunity to really shine and grow.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's great. I've had one of my here, Brandon. He was one of my counter guys, and Brandon is a great dude. He's got a lot of energy. He's really smart. Don't tell him I said that.
He's
And
what you do know. He's one of the coaching clients, so I talk to
I
him
know.
maybe twice a month. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you're right. He is excited because we just talked about he's got ideas, and I know where you're going with that about expansion, and
yeah,
he is. He's another
yeah.
one of the folks that all the folks, but he's another one that I just, I get off a call with and go, wow,
Well, I
it's
hated to lose him because
right, right.
I loved having him on my team, but the fact that I'm never going to stop or get in the way of somebody bettering themselves,
Yep,
and an opportunity to run our Reading branch came along, and as sad as it was to see him go, I'm so happy that he's found happiness in Reading and with his family and everything, and
yep,
he's growing, he's doing his thing, and I couldn't be prouder of somebody that I know that I've personally coached a little
yep.
bit. Um, Seeing them blossom like that, it's really great to see.
It is cool. And by the way, he already sees you as a mentor. And one of the things I suggested to him in our last conversation was to talk to you about maybe even more formalizing that relationship because I think that would be a huge benefit with his goals and aspirations down the road. So,
You know, I've been blessed with having great mentors in my career.
mm-hmm.
I'd say my life. I've had great teachers in elementary, junior high, high school. In this trade, I've had many great um, instructors or influencers and coaches, if you will. And I want to be able to pass that knowledge on,
Yep.
and give that so freely. And I think that's important, especially with people coming into the trade, the new people coming in,
Mm-hmm.
to have that as something to fall back on, and gain that knowledge because it's not easy. I know some people make it look easy, but there's a lot going on when you have 10 phone calls going, three guys at the
Sure.
counter over here, and
Sure.
it's nuts.
Yeah, but that's where the juice is at, right? Passing it on,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you already know that, and I already see you doing that. You've been doing that, so well. Listen, my friend, I wish you all the best, and I know you're going to keep up the outstanding work and the team building you're doing out there, and I can't wait until our next one-on-one to hear what's new and exciting. I know you got a lot of moving pieces, so
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm excited. Yeah, I
keep it
can't
going.
wait.
Yeah.
I love our conversations, and we'll be talking soon. And I really appreciate you having me on today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, we'll check back with you in the future, have you on again, and see what's new and exciting, maybe a few months down the road. So, Adam, thank you again. And
Mark, team, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
all right, we'll be back with our second guest for the episode. Mark O'Donnell here with our second guest of the Operations Excellence podcast. And for our second guest today, we have Gerard Mott, who is a partner with the Trusted Advisors Network. And Gerard, as I did share with Mike, our producer here, that you are actually my coach, and he was quite interested in hearing that. So, Gerard, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Awesome. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you came to be doing this, what you're doing now?
And do you want me to start about a sunny day in 1970?
Yeah, no, you don't have to.
Can
You
we
don't
skip
have
some
to.
of that?
Yeah, no. I mean,
Okay.
kind of the Cliff Note versions, maybe the highlights. How's that?
Sounds good. Grew up in New Jersey, moved out to Pennsylvania, and after college, I was a business major at Bucknell University out in Lewisburg, PA.
Mm-hmm.
Left college and went into the sales field. So that's where I started. Actually, I mean, this journey, it may seem odd to some folks, but it's actually pretty darn connected. My first job out of college was selling windows and doors, door to door.
Wow.
So I literally was going door to door selling windows and doors. And that was a great experience for a couple of reasons. One, loved meeting new people, loved talking to people. Got a little thicker skin. Learned some really bad things about business as well. I did very well in that business for a couple of years. Got promoted through, and went into some of the management roles. And one Friday afternoon, I showed up in my office, and the owner of the company was there and said, Gerard, I just want to let you know you got team meeting, starts in about 20 minutes. Yeah, I know. And he said, I just want to let you know, just tell everybody that they're fired. We're closing the business today.
Huh.
And it was an experience that I will never forget, a conversation I'll never forget. And it was one of the things I said, man, I was young at the time. I was, late 20s. And I said, I don't want that ever to happen again. It was debilitating, I think, actually, might be a fair word.
Sure.
So I ended up telling my sales team of 8 that it was nice to see you guys this morning. You guys want to go get some beers? It's we're done, and it was brutal. So it took a month or two actually off after that, and found another advertising job outside of Philadelphia. Or another sales job, pardon me, in the advertising field. Mm-hmm. Did that for a while when I met somebody that caused me to have to do a little relocation. So I left that role and found a company in Moton, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and a half northwest of Philadelphia. And I realized from my experience in those 2 prior roles that the role of the customer was so important. When you're knocking on doors, literally knocking on someone's door saying, hey, you want to buy a new door? The ability to keep those customers was so helpful. I mean, it was just such a great thing. So I realized I wanted to do something there. I was really getting into the people side of things. And I said, so I found this organization and I started helping in sort of an HR kind of sales role. And then, long story short, that was I was October 30th of 2000. And the organization at the time was called Resource Associates, but I worked there and I went through a health issue. I had colon cancer when I was 39, I think it was, when I got diagnosed. And I realized that the organization I had worked for was so different than those first 2 experiences I had. As they said, well, do you need someone to drive you? Do you need somebody to pick you up here? Do you need me to bring some food over to your house? And this is not only the president and good friend of mine and the current partner of mine, but this was the administrative assistant. This was the inventory. And I said, what the heck is going on here? The culture of this place it was great. Right. So in about 6 years ago or so, 7 years ago, there was some defunct ownership investors in the organization. It gave me the opportunity to finally pull back 100%, no longer having to worry about someone else having the ability to tell me that today's my last day. Right. I jumped into entrepreneurship a few years prior to that. Back in 2009, I started my own company as well. We were actually in hospitality in restaurant bar industry. Did that for 15 years. So, I mean, I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. But when I had the opportunity to join Tammy, who was the president of the time at Resource Associates, and form Trusted Advisors with another person who I worked with at that point for 20 years named Wendy Howland, the 3 of us decided that we could get that defunct ownership out of the network and be able to create something or continue to grow something that had been around for 35 years. So that's when I became a partner in Trusted Advisors. And Trusted Advisors is a network of independent consultants. What we do is we help individuals start, expand, grow consulting practices. And the industry that we do that in is really in the people development and the customer loyalty side of things. Because servicing a customer is easy, but back to that day of knocking on that door and saying, hey, you want to buy a window or door? Right. The loyalty factor was key because they came back and said, oh, we bought a door from you. I need some windows. I need some siding, some roofing. Oh, and my neighbor's door is cracked and it's so loud when this garage door closes. Can you go sell him one too? And so that loyalty factor was key. And so that's a lot of conceptually what Trusted Advisors as a business believes in as well, is how do you help organizations create a loyal customer base? So does that at all come close to answering your question.
I think you answered that, and one I hadn't even asked yet, which was to tell us a little bit more about Trusted Advisors. So I think you segued in without my help, which once again, you're a step ahead of me. So thanks. Appreciate that.
That is very hard to do, Mark. Very hard to be a step ahead of you.
Oh boy. Not, come on. You can't BS an Irishman now. Come on, Gerard.
Well, yeah, Mark, what's your handicap? I know it's about
it's a 9 right now. Yeah, it's a 9.
Yeah.
But
my handicap might be a 9 too, but it has a number after it. So.
Come on, it's not that bad. Might have a number before it, but it's interesting though. And thank you for that for our listeners. And in full disclosure, I am an affiliate, one of the affiliates that Gerard talked about, and have been since late 21. I think
December.
When I joined.
I believe you came through a training in December of 2021. Sounds right.
Yeah, that sounds spot on. And I'll tell you about my experience, and for our listeners with Trusted Advisors. Right, when I was separated and they eliminated my position as general manager for the local manufacturing company I was working for. After my wife calmed down and looked at the separation agreement and said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go play golf and take a couple months and figure out what I want to do." Oh, okay. All good. Well, I had thought about going into consulting for some time, right? I started my career as an engineer. Even years ago, I thought about going into more of the engineering consulting side and never pulled the trigger on that. But I was really interested in it this time, and I got some good advice. And one of the things I heard from some friends of mine who had made the transition from corporate life into consulting successfully, one gentleman gave me a great piece of advice. He said 2 things to me. Number 1, he said, figure out what you love to do, focus on doing that, and you'll be successful, right? Check that box.
Passion.
Absolutely. And number 2, he said, you really need to find a network. And he gave me a laundry list of reasons why that was important. And so I said, okay. So being, the good anal retentive engineer, I started doing my homework. And I came across this group called Trusted Advisors. And even before I talked to you folks, I got to tell you, my initial reaction was my bullshit meter was pegging out, because I go back to, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And as I'm researching you guys online and I'm poking around, I'm like, man, this sounds like perfect, right? Because you guys are focused on leadership development, team building, right? How to develop an organization that really drives to that customer loyalty, not just customer satisfaction. And those are all things between my 35 years of experience plus and my educational background, everything I know. It's just like this jives with what I know and how I want to present this and what I want to do with this. Because the 2 things I came up with that really drive my passion is the engineer in me still loves solving problems. Once you learn how to be an engineer, you can't unlearn that, whether you want to or not. Well, that's a whole nother discussion for another time. And the second one is I really look back at my professional life, and when I was happiest, I was helping other people develop. It was mentoring and coaching others. And you put those 2 things together, that's exactly what I do for a living. And the great thing about, one of the many great things about Trusted Advisors, also in full disclosure, Gerard is my coach. So I have a coach. I do coaching with lots of other folks. But we pretty much have a call, I want to say pretty much weekly. I mean, depending on our schedules, we fall off that sometimes.
I'd say 49 a year.
Yeah.
48 a year, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. So pretty close to weekly. Good call. And, we have the kind of relationship where I can tell Gerard, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I want to think about trying. He's got that experience and that knowledge from the years in the business and brings the Trusted Advisor side to it, right? But also, hey, these other affiliates have tried this. Maybe you want to talk to so-and-so. And so that's also the power of being a member of that network, right? Because you've connected me a number of times with other folks when I was looking at, when I first started looking at working with not-for-profits. Oh, you should talk to so-and-so. Great conversations we had, and he gave me a plethora of information for no charge, right? And we're all like that. And you've done the same, where you've turned other affiliates on to me and say, oh, you should talk to Mark. And that's such a great network, and everybody's so willing to help each other. The other thing that is awesome about Trusted Advisors is, with all that 30 years in the business, and Tammy and Wendy and yourself bring so much knowledge to this, and you guys have developed these programs that I can draw from and then customize, right? And every client I work with, it ends up being a customized program, but I don't have to start from scratch, which
you're
is
not
hugely valuable.
In your office writing.
Yeah, because that back office time, right, for a consultant is time I don't get paid for, right? So and the programs are tried and true. I mean, we just my guest in the first half of the episode today was from US Air Conditioning, who you're familiar with because we've talked about them quite a bit, right? My largest client. And we talked about the customized leadership development program this individual went through. And he's a regional manager, and he is just thriving and great things, right? And so you have that back office support, right, which is hugely valuable to a consultant because, again, all that time I spend in the office that I'm not out there getting or serving customers, I'm basically not getting paid for. So it's huge. I do have a couple questions, and I'm curious to see. I mean, you and I have talked about this a little bit, but maybe more for our audience is if you think about all the Trusted Advisors affiliates, and I know you don't talk to every one of them, but I know you and Tammy and Wendy talk, and you're basically providing coaching for pretty much all of us or most of us. What are the most, right now in recently, what are the most common issues you're hearing from affiliates that they're dealing with out there with the business world?
Mark, I don't know if I'm going to, should I preface this with asking you a question, or should I answer your question and probably answer your next question at the same time? Because there's two things there, Mark. Because there's things that, as a small business owner, yourself, and we have about 200 consultants around the country, and they're sole practitioners. We have husband-wife teams. We have father-son teams. We have, people with, a couple of employees. I mean, so they're mixed. But there's a difference because of what those, or especially what we help those individuals with in terms of challenges. And then also there's the business world as a whole. There's some different challenges there. So
maybe the business world first.
Business world first.
Yeah.
Talent acquisition and retention.
Yeah.
Period. End of story.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line, getting the right staff, getting the right people in the right seats, getting the people in the right seats with the right path. And that's everything from my forklift driver to my COO.
Right.
Because our opinion is that the forklift driver is more important than the COO. They're the ones that are doing the work every day.
Right.
And I'm not sure why I use a forklift driver. I apologize. It's just a random example. But we also believe that the human capacity or the human capital is so critical, and keeping them is hard. Keeping good employees right now is a challenge. And one of the most important things to doing that, or critical issues to doing that, is having the right culture within the organization. Mm-hmm. And the culture starts all the way at the top.
Yep.
It starts, well, I shouldn't say all the way top. Right below the strategic plan is the culture.
Right.
And probably part of the strategic plan is really the culture too. But the culture of an organization is critical. And so a lot of organizations are realizing that perhaps the culture of the manager is the smartest person in the room, and we're going to scream loudly, and we're going to carry, and we're going to continue employee beatings until morale improves. It doesn't work anymore. 20 years ago, maybe that was the right approach.
I don't think it worked well 20 years ago.
I don't think so either, but my memory's bad, so I maybe give some credit, and that's why people are sticking to it. But instead, the smartest person in the room is the person who's willing to get input, get advice from those that are doing. So, the super worker becomes a supervisor. Mm-hmm. That's an old adage that we still believe in strongly. You do a good job driving the forklift, become a forklift supervisor.
Right.
What a lot of organizations are having is they're saying, they become a supervisor, but the skills that are necessary to be an effective supervisor are very different than the skills that are necessary to be an effective forklift driver.
Absolutely.
So a lot of organizations fail to provide that service, and I'm not sure service is the best word, but provide
opportunity, maybe.
But yeah, I mean, you choose a lot of things, and they set them up for failure.
Yeah.
And they start saying, "Oh, John was such a great forklift driver, man, but he's a horrible supervisor." And what happens in most companies is one of two things: one, John gets fired for poor knowledge, poor skills.
Right.
And they're not the forklift driving skills that he was hired for. They're the interpersonal skills, the communication skills, the delegation skills, et cetera, et cetera. Or, and this one's scary, I don't know if you've actually seen it personally or not, they promote him again. We screwed up. We put him in the wrong spot. You know what? He shouldn't be a supervisor. He should be a manager.
Right.
And so they promote him again. And then guess what happens? Then they promote him again. And then all of a sudden he's the COO, and he's got, no development of those, I hate this word, but the soft skills side of things. And so
I prefer people skills.
Yeah, people skills. Yeah. That's holistic, from the acquisition, the culture and things along those lines, up to the ability to provide those things for their clients. It's leading to employee retention dropping.
Right.
I'm not going to use any of them because there's a lot of different statistics out there.
Right.
Do a couple of searches on it. How much does it cost to lose an employee?
Right.
And you're talking about, and I don't want to put one of them because there's a lot, and you can see tons of numbers out there. So it costs a lot.
Absolutely. So this is not a new challenge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've seen, is it's really just been exacerbated by what the labor market has become, right? That it's even more critical now because essentially, especially if you're a skilled worker of any type with some solid experience, I mean, even a handful of years, if you want to make more money, you can find somebody that will likely pay you more money. Like, you can jump at this point if you have any kind of skill set. So if that's all that's keeping people in your workplace, then, right, it's an issue, right? And people want to feel that they are part of something bigger than themselves. But, one of the things you hit on, which is awesome, and it's so true, people want a pathway, right? Are you going to help me develop? And what does that look like? Right. And is it real development, or is it just, lip service and, we're going to pay for you to, sit in front of recorded, video, which, as you and I both know, it's not that there's not some value to that, but it's not the same as real development. Right. So
there's a major difference between doing an online course, and having a coach. And I use the word coach a lot. And you used it earlier more, because coaching is not always one-on-one. Right? I mean, we do a lot of, and our affiliates do a lot of group coaching work. I'll take a group of 10 sales. I don't know if your previous guest talked about it. You take a group of 10 managers, put them together, and now we're starting to really get brain power. That's crazy.
100%. Yeah, he did talk about that. He talked about gaining perspective from his fellow managers going through that program that helped him see things differently, changed his perspective completely, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. In sales, it happens so much. It's, when you put a bunch of salespeople together, you got the top couple of performers, they're hitting their goals, they're hitting their objectives every time. And then you've got a couple that aren't. And you know what? The couple that aren't, they say, well, what are you doing that's working?
Right.
Well, guess what? Let me learn some of those techniques. And now all of a sudden, not only is my top performer actually getting better because there's an attitudinal change as they're feeling more respected, but our lower performers are now beginning to become top performers because now they've got new skills, abilities, knowledge to effectively do their job better.
Right. In manufacturing and engineering, we call that best practices, right? It works in any field. Right, learn from the best and go and apply it. Right,
and Mark, if I may, if I can take that last comment, best practices is a concept that we talk about quite a bit, and I know you do it as well with your client work, but I doubt it was going to be a question on your list. Standard operating procedures are perfect for now.
Yep. Standard
operating procedures are not perfect for tomorrow. And this goes to another one of those culture things. And I love doing this. It's a fun exercise. Walk into any company you'd like, talk to a worker and say, what do you do? Whatever they answer, say, why do you do it that way?
Right.
And when they answer, I guarantee you they're going to answer one of two things 99% of the time. That's the way we've always done it, or that's the way I was trained to do it.
Right.
That's the answer. Well, the problem is a lot of organizations we've always done it that way. Well, just because it was the best way to do it yesterday doesn't mean it's the best way to do it today.
Right.
And so that's a lot of the stuff that you and our other consultants do with clients is saying, how do you do that? Well, one of the things you have to do is make sure the manager's saying, you know what, let me ask the person who's building the widget,
Right.
is there a better way to build the widget?
Right. Yeah, it's funny that you say that, and I 100% agree. For many years as a manager, senior leader, there was one phrase that I would almost always set me off when I asked somebody, well, why did we do that? Or why are we doing it that way? And if they said, well, because that's the way we've always done it, like I could feel my blood pressure start climbing, because they quickly learned that that's a non-answer. Right now,
but
if you tell me,
it's not their fault, Mark.
Right.
It wasn't their fault.
Right. You're right. You're right.
Never empowered to. The manager never said it's okay for you to have a good idea.
Yeah. Go figure out a better way to build a widget. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And you're spot on.
And it's okay if you fail.
What works today might not be the best way tomorrow. Right.
Absolutely.
It's one thing that people, I think, struggle with sometimes is they do all this work documenting processes and developing training programs, which are all good things. They're not bad things, right? But you have to understand that processes are living, breathing entities. And like any living, breathing entity, it does not stay static. Not a good one, right? It needs to constantly be changed over time to meet new challenges, changes, and whatever's going on.
Absolutely spot on. I'll give you an example of it. I'm working with some of our newer folks to join the network, and I always joke about it. We start, we help them to create a marketing mix, a marketing plan, where what type of target market they're on. I mean, these are stuff you and I continue to do.
Yep.
And I always joke, and I'm like, if you notice that the marketing list of some of the ideas that we're going to talk about, you're going to notice that cold calling's not on it.
Right.
25 years ago, I mean, I can be a living example of it. Cold calling, knocking on doors, that's the ultimate cold call. It made me a lot of money. I mean, it did. Yeah, absolutely, it worked. But it doesn't work today. No, not that it doesn't work today. It can, but it's not the same. Businesses change. The world changes. If you're not changing with it,
right,
you're a blockbuster.
Yep.
And I'd much rather be Netflix than Blockbuster.
Yeah. There's no more blockbusters, and Netflix is doing quite well.
Yeah, and they were competitors at one point in time.
Yeah.
Officially, although Blockbuster would never have admitted that because you had to go to the store to pick up a video on Friday night to watch a video that night. And Netflix said, "We'll send it to you," and then, since then it's growing quite a bit.
Yeah, the rest, as they say, is history, right?
Absolutely.
So I do, one of the things I thought about as, and this is more technical, but seeing as how it's you and I talking, for our listeners, can you share what is the basis of the leadership model for leadership development that Trusted Advisors uses?
What is the basis? There's a...
Uh-oh, he's looking for a reference. Now I know I'm in trouble.
Well, I've got an old version. Actually, this is kind of funny. I think I know you've read it. This is talking about changing things. There's a book from, I'm not sure which edition that is, but it's an old one. One of the books that we wrote, it's actually not one of our programs. It's not how actually we help institute change within clients, but it's one that helps open eyes. It's called Fail-Safe Leadership.
Oh, yeah.
That's the basis of the model. And that is, leadership is not all about, it shouldn't be all about the skills.
Right.
You need the right skills, but effective leadership is all about results.
Yep.
It's all about and I say bottom line, I do not mean only financial bottom line. So please don't do it that way. But it's all about measurable outcomes and measurable results. Measurable results, I mean, you know me personally, Mark, but this may sound strange. Women's volleyball games is an extremely important measurable result for Gerard.
Right.
My daughter will be, she's played her last official competitive volleyball game at this point in time as she's just finishing her senior year at college. But that was a measurable result to me.
Right.
How many games I could get to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the same time, how much money's in your bank account? That may be a measurable result for you. It may be, how often your wife goes, you go on vacation. I mean, there's a lot of different types of measurable results, personally and professionally.
Right.
But effective leaders get the results. That's the basis, I would say, conceptually, of our leadership model. I mean, I don't know how much detail you want to go there and what that, in your question, but that'd be my 30,000-foot answer for you, if that helps.
No, I think that's spot on. And I actually love the brevity, because I think as I asked that question, if somebody's listening to this, they were probably leaning in going, oh, boy, here comes some really technical stuff. Or they tuned it out because they thought there was some technical stuff coming. But
if you ask a real technical question, we're in trouble, because I ain't answering it.
Yeah, but all joking aside, right? We could talk about different attributes, what a successful leader looks like, but at the end of the day, that is what matters, right? That what matters is, are they getting the results? And again, they're measurable, but it isn't just about the bottom line. There's a lot of other measurements, right? What's the turnover, right? What's your average length of tenure within the company, right? I mean, one of my clients, who, without mentioning his name, who I'm talking about, but one of the reasons I love working with him is you listening to 450 people, and the average tenure is something like between 10 and 15 years, and you go, that's a solid company, right?
Trusted Advisors' average tenure currently is, especially if you look at the three coaches in our thing, I am by far the least tenured at 26 years.
You're the youngster.
Yeah, I'm the youngster, and actually age-wise we're pretty close. But the average tenure of coaching experience for our three partners is 33 years or something along those lines.
Right.
But that comes back to, once again, if and I used the example earlier, or I used the story earlier. If the response when I got colon cancer was different than what it was now, or different than what it was, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Right.
But the culture, that was the things that, Tammy at the time and team believed in. And that's still some of the stuff that not some of the stuff we believe in today.
Right. Right. And it shows. So you mentioned earlier about customer loyalty, and let's delve into that for a moment, if we could, a little bit more, because I think it's so important to everything I do and to what Trusted Advisors brings to the table. So for our audience, if you would, delve into the difference a little bit between what is a difference between a satisfied customer and a loyal customer.
You actually already answered this question. You used the word employee though instead, and I'll do two things to that. One, good organizations look at their employees as customers. Mm-hmm. They're just internal.
Right.
And you said earlier that a satisfied, employees in today's world, they'll leave for $1, $1 more an hour. You satisfy a customer and they're happy. Great. But the guy down the street, if they offer the same product for $1 less, 2 seconds quicker, look at the fast food world.
Right.
They're talking, some of the studies that they talk about Chick-fil-A as a good example. How quickly they can get somebody through that drive-through meant X number of dollars to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So that's really one of the key elements is what can you do to differentiate your organization so that it doesn't matter if they're 30 seconds quicker. It doesn't matter if they're 20% cheaper. They're going to keep coming back to you.
Right.
Once again, it's never always about price. It's about value. Value doesn't include price, but value includes the way you answer the phone. One of my things, I hate calling somewhere and you get a robot.
Right.
I hate it. I mean, even the local store, I'm going to go to the local pharmacy because someone answers the telephone.
Right.
It may take a minute longer to get, for someone to answer the phone, but, I want to talk to the person.
Right.
Well, that's part of the value that they're bringing to the table.
Right.
So, to increase customer loyalty, you need to increase your value. And that customer's going to keep coming back time and time again. And what really, to me, makes them loyal is they're going to bring their friend.
Right.
My wife does some retail stuff, and one of our clients, and I say it's us now because I've been helping her for the last year or so on this. One of our clients literally comes to some of our events and brings 5 people with him, 4 children and an in-law to every one of our events. That's a loyal customer. If you're willing to bring your flesh and blood,
right?
And so I say friend, but friend, family, whatever you want to call them. If you're willing to bring your flesh and blood and put them in front of us and say, here, do business with this person, that's loyalty.
So I appreciate that very excellent description and difference. Wouldn't you also say, besides value, that part of that equation is trust, right? That you have really
That's
earned
value. That's part of the value.
that, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So in your mind, that's part of the value equation.
Yeah. And trust is honesty. You do a lot of strategic planning work with your clients. I don't want to say I don't like it, but I'm not a big fan of integrity as a core value of a company. To me, it's a barrier to entry. If you don't have integrity, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be doing it. But same things, there when the trust piece is it has to be there.
Right.
We do business with people that we like, know, but most importantly, we do business with people that we trust.
Absolutely.
You can use the name of my company as an example for that. Why is it Trusted Advisors? Why do a lot of our consultants and our coaches call themselves on business card or in their talking a trusted advisor? Because I need that.
Right.
I'll use someone beside you, Mark, because I don't want to be personal on this. I've had the affiliate cry on my shoulder. And that's why, because they trust that they can have that conversation with me.
Right.
I'll tell you what, I know you may not partake in this sometimes, but I've had some pretty damn expensive bottles of wine in my life because they wanted to share that with me.
Right.
Why? Because they trust me. So
right.
that they can have that celebration and say, yeah, this is something I can celebrate this. And I know that trust is there.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than friendship.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than honesty and integrity.
Yeah.
To me, it's a super.
It's building a relationship at the end of the day. That's really what it is, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, I may not partake of a bottle of wine with you, but I've been after you for at least 2.5 years now to play a round of golf with me. So we're going to make that happen.
Have to help John, your previous guest, last month, I was ready to play with you on Sunday, and you had to stay in New York to work with them on Monday morning, if I remember correctly. I'm just saying. Now, I will tell you, last summer when you did come down to Pennsylvania, that was 100% on me because of how a little sickness. But
I understand, and actually, I think with the heat index, it was like pushing 100 that day. So it was
it was well over 100.
A little ugly with the humidity. Although being the knucklehead I am, I would have played. Just drink a lot of
you at least
water.
went out and hit a bucket of balls that night. I know. So
I did. Yeah. I did it after the session. I went out and hit a bucket of balls because I had to get a fix. For my golf fix.
Where's the golf course halfway between us? I don't even know.
We'll get to figure that out offline. There you go. That's I thought about that. Like maybe somewhere in the southern tier of New York somewhere. There's some really great courses down there. So there's an opportunity.
Can we go? Not great courses. I'm not that good, don't remember. So
well, but there's some nice courses that are forgiving. How's that, Gerard?
All right, that sounds good. Good.
So how's business been so far this year, and what's the future look like for Trusted Advisors?
What's the future look like for Trusted Advisors, and what's business been like this year? It has been, I need to make sure I'm politically correct and not using too many expletives in answering that question. It's been interesting. It's been very interesting.
Yeah.
The world has gone through some turmoil, and turmoil, not necessarily a bad word. Change is good. Change can be bad too. But the world's been questionable. So what we've seen is, this may be not the political correct analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. When times are good, people need us. No, pardon me. When times are good, people want us. When times are bad, people need us. I always use the analogy of a liquor store. When the world goes crazy, that's the time to hire a coach. That's the time to, figure out how can we get better. The best companies in the world, when turmoil happens, they invest more and more percentage dollars, however you want to look at it. They invest more and more in making sure that their people are doing well.
Right.
There's no question about it. And so for us, what we've seen is that those companies that aren't doing so well, when this turmoil comes out, they say things like, we're going to put our heads down and we're just going to plow on through it.
Right.
And if you're an employee and you hear that analogy or you see that analogy, you don't want to be there anymore.
Right.
My head hurts. I don't want to bang into the wall anymore. So we've seen so much turmoil, but so that's allowing for better opportunities for some consultants out there for sure. Mm-hmm. It's also allowing us to start meeting some individuals who are saying, you know what, like you were 5 years ago. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been helping teams. I've been, developing strategic plans. And you know what? If I could get somebody that could help me maybe create my marketing plan, execute that marketing plan, make me more efficient in servicing my clients, you know what? It makes sense for me to get out there and finally hang my own shingle.
Right.
And so it's a good time for that as well. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that, I guess.
I'll give you the opportunity for a little plug here. If there's somebody out there listening and is thinking about starting their own consulting practice, what would you say is the reason they should talk to Trusted Advisors as opposed to other networks that may offer similar opportunities?
If I didn't like you, I'd tell you to answer this question.
I could, but I asked you first.
I know. Because you have the better answers than I do, even I think. But experience, like we were just joking about. Tammy, Wendy, and I, as 3 of our coaches, we've got 120 years of experience in 3 of us. Right. The network is a huge thing. You talked about that earlier already. One of the biggest, and actually, I'll answer this a different way too. One of the biggest, I'm going to say fear. I'm not a big fan of the word, but fear is just false expectations appearing real. If you've not used that analogy, acronym before, put it in your brain, listeners, because it'll help a lot. It's fear of going out and getting those clients. Yeah. And what we've done is we've created a process in the marketing and sales technique, as well as in the client delivery, that helps people overcome that false expectation. Yeah. And be able to create a revenue stream. And one step further than that, because one of the other things that a lot of people think of when they think of consultants, they think of something called the peaks and the valleys. I get a client, I go make $50,000 for the next 3 months, and then what do I got to do? I got to go find another client. So that gives you peaks and valleys. With some of the ways that we can work with our clients, I'll use the term target classes, Mark, just so you know what I'm talking about. We've discovered some ways that you can work with organizations and individuals to not eliminate the peaks, because the peaks are good, right? But actually eliminate the values, the valleys, to give yourself a baseline, to give yourself as close to a W-2 as you can in your own business. Yeah. And so that's another big piece. We do initial training and support from everything from sales, marketing, facilitation, customer service, et cetera, to ongoing stuff. What we were just talking about, we do ongoing development sessions several times a year, sometimes in person, sometimes virtually, where you're able to learn from, up to 200 other consultants that are doing very close to the exact same thing you are. Right. Mark, think 5 years ago, when you were in that room, you're looking at someone saying, you've been doing that for 15, 20 years. That's what I want to be. Right. And now you're starting to get some of those calls, I know, because we talked about one last week. You're starting to get those calls and people are saying, Mark, I want to be like you. We believe the same kind of things. What could I do to do that? How could I create this successful business? And so it's just all different types of expertise with people that have similar belief structures.
Yep. Yep.
So, and I mean, there's probably some other things, you talk about, I can talk about, but
I think that's a great answer, and I will provide this as a little bit of personal experience. You talk about trying to eliminate the peaks and valleys, and you also mentioned the ongoing development opportunities. So myself, just last year, I went through the Trusted Advisors Coaching Academy and became a certified business coach. And by doing that, I've allowed or created the opportunity for myself to now do more one-on-one coaching, right? Which has essentially created a baseline, like you talked about, right? Not quite a W-2, but I've got a pretty consistent stream of one-on-one coaching clients that, irregardless of other project work I'm doing, pretty much every month, that's a given. And if you add that to a couple other things that I've been doing on a monthly basis, right, that's allowed that steady stream. And that all came from a lot of input from Trusted Advisors, and then obviously me going out and doing the work and having the conversations. But
I'll say that as well, Mark, just to confirm one of the comments you just made there. Doing the work. Owning a consulting business is not easy. Some of our guys will tell you, yeah, it is. It's a walk in the park. It's not easy. You have to work. You can't sit at home, build the best website in the world, and say, "Oh, come to me, clients." And they all flock in. You got to go out there and work. But you said it earlier. If you love what you do, is it that much work?
Yeah, it feels like working, right? I have what turn out to be work conversations in the strangest places, sometimes on the golf course, never expected. Sometimes I'm out to dinner with friends, and somebody else that I don't know that well is joining us, and, hey, what do you do? And next thing you know, we're having an in-depth conversation, and I'm realizing this is a potential client. And, I've had a number of conversations that have turned into clients just that way. So I don't even know that it's a conscious readiness to be ready to have those conversations as much as just having the passion, right, and the knowledge of what I do, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, here's an opportunity, right? So it's
what you believe. It's what you are.
Right.
It's what I mean. I don't want to put tallies on the board, but I'll one up you on thing. I generated a coaching client in a grocery store checkout line.
Yeah.
Based on what food was in their cart, and some of the personal issues that they were dealing with.
Right.
I mean, literally, but it's who we are. Now, I will tell you one thing. If you are married, your spouse may catch on sometimes and may yell at you to say, "Stop coaching me." And so, if you're out there and you're doing the coaching thing and you've experienced it, you know exactly what I mean. But sometimes you do have to try to turn it off, and it's hard.
I get a version of that, but it's usually in mixed Vietnamese and English. So, as you know, my wife is Vietnamese, so yeah. Which I understand very well what she's saying, and it's usually stop doing that. Well, Gerard, I think I've taken up plenty of your time, and I want to say thank you again. It's a pleasure having you on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. So thank you.
It's fun, man. I love this stuff. Can we do it again next week? No. I'll let your audience talk to other people. But like we said, if you love what you do, keep doing what you love.
Yeah, it ain't working, right? It ain't working.
Exactly.
It doesn't feel like it. Gerard, thank you, sir. Have a great day, my friend.
Mark, I will talk to you next week.
You got it.
We will look for golf courses.
All right. You got it, bud.
All right, bud. Thanks.